welcome to this month's first midweek warm-up.
It's been a stressful 2 months.
It's been a stressful time, but we're here.
If you see an excavator in the background, just ignore it.
This is not the excavator you're looking for.
It's actually Tim. But...
Yeah,
just ignore Tim.
So we are at our friend's house where we've been parked for the last couple of months with everything going on. Back and forth to Oregon twice, and lots of changes, lots and lots of
frustrations, irritations,
things happening. But we're here, and God has a plan, and He's good even when things are confusing or irritating or frustrating.
Or when Emily's grooming me during videos.
He has the hair on.
Oh no, we have dogs and kids.
Yeah. So anyhow,
who's it?
We have this week and next week to finish Job. That's our intent.
Yes, because it's 42 chapters, and that should have been 3/4 of a year, not a year and a half like it has been now.
Yeah.
We're behind.
So
we're going to do chapter 40 and 41 today because they go together, and be wrong to not do them together. But we're going to be doing it slightly differently, so bear with us.
Okay. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm already apparently. So chapter 40 reads, "Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, Shall the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? He who rebukes God, let him answer it." That's kind of harsh in and of itself. But then Job answered the Lord and said, "Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand over my mouth. Once I have spoken, but I will not answer. Yes, twice, but I will proceed no further." So I don't know about you guys, but there's lots of times where I had to stick my hand over my mouth to stop saying stupid things because I excel at saying stupid things.
Well, kind of the concept of biting your tongue, that literally has to happen sometimes. I have definitely had that happen where I had to literally just kind of bite my tongue and keep walking and not say what I wanted to say because it was not important, it was not beneficial.
Well, at this point, obviously, Job has spent the last 39 chapters mostly defending himself and saying, "I don't deserve this." He did deserve it. No question with that. But he's been complaining, and God's here saying, No. This is reality here. And we're going to go through that for the next 8 verses, I think, here. So starting verse 6, it says, "Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Would you indeed annul my judgment? Would you condemn me that you may be justified? Have you an arm like God? Or can you thunder with a voice like his? Then adorn yourself with majesty and splendor, and array yourself with glory and beauty. Disperse the rage of your wrath. Look on everyone who is proud and humble him. Look on everyone who is proud and bring him low. Tread down the wicked in their place. Hide them in the dust together. Bind their faces in hidden darkness. Then I will also confess to you that your own right hand can save you." So God basically is saying here, you don't have any right to tell me what to do. What you should be doing is talking to the bad people and the wicked people and the ones that have been giving you bad advice and put them in their place. And it's not because Job is so right, it's because God is. And God makes it very clear here that He is the one that is the judgment line here. It's not because Job's amazing. It's not because Job's wonderful. It's not because Job's went through all the suffering. It's because God's in control. Is there something you want to say?
It's just the verse 10, "Adorn yourself with majesty and dignity. Clothe yourself with glory and splendor." This whole section, he's pointing out that God gets angry and doesn't sin. He gets angry but is righteous in that, and Job is not necessarily that.
Well, it's that, but it's also, if you remember, Job is lying in an ash heap right now, scraping himself with potsherds. He's dingy, he's dirty, he's nasty, and God's saying, grow up and be a man here. You have no right to be sitting there wallowing in pity. It says, stand up and answer, because I'm going to question you. You're going to answer me. But if you cannot do these things, then I'm still in control.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say on No, it's
pretty cut and dry.
kind of put your best foot forward, but God's still always better.
Well, prepare yourself. We're gonna have a talk, and you're not gonna like it because you're wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong. I'm gonna be honest, because I'm not gonna be anything but honest here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say what I can say because I can see your innermost thoughts, no matter what. But now we're going to go into verse 15 through 24. And before we read it, I'd like to point out that if you look at post-evolutionary Christian thought, which I know that's a strange thought right here to say that, but after evolution was introduced 160 years ago or so, most Christian scientists, not Christian scientists of religion, but Christian scientists, are going to say the behemoth here is a hippo. So I'll read part of this through and just think about a hippo as we're talking about this, and you go, I don't think so. Because I don't think so. Look, an excavator. So it says, look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. Which that's a big hint right there. I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs are like bars of iron. I don't know if you've ever seen a hippo, but their tails are like this big. I don't think that's a cedar tree. And I don't think Ellie's going to like what the purpose could be for that, but that's fine. Because it mean anything.
But you're not wrong. A hippo almost kind of fits that imagery, except the whole cedar, the tail, and like...
Hippos are big and buff and they're scary.
Size.
But they don't have no tail like a cedar. And they don't have bones like beams of bronze. And their ribs are not like bars of iron. They break just fine when you hit them with things. And they're heavy. Like a car. I mean, they can eat your car if they want to, but it's still going to die when you run into it. But at the same time, it does say that I made along with you. And so that's talking about the days of creation. And so on the 5th and 6th days of creation, you have all of the animals being made. And so on day 5, you have all of the like birds and ocean dwelling creatures. But on day 6, you have everything on the land. And it specifically says slithering creatures, which includes dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
I like dinosaurs. But that's why it's post-evolutionary. Because before evolutionary thought, there was no question, oh, is this a dinosaur? Well, obviously this is a stupid dinosaur. There's only one explanation of this being a dinosaur. Not a hippo. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
But going on, it says in verse 19, he is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. Surely the mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play there. He lies under the lotus trees, in a covert of reeds and marsh. The lotus trees cover him with their shade. The willows by the brook surround him. Indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident, though the Jordan gushes into his mouth. Though he takes it in his eyes, or one pierces his nose with a snare. So I'm not sure if you've ever tried it, but I've seen people try and snare a hippo. I mean, it doesn't work very well, but it can be done. But have you ever seen a brontosaurus get snared? I mean, if you've seen a real live brontosaurus currently, you're probably watching Jurassic Park. Brontosaurus probably are dead. I can't say they are extinct because dinosaurs aren't extinct, regardless of what the news tell you. Or Jurassic Park. But this is very clearly a dinosaur. Probably a brontosaurus. Because brontosaurus tail is like this big around. That's a cedar tree.
Least.
And it hits things and knocks them flying. Not to mention that he eats grass, like it says here in verse 15. And his strength is in his hips. Scientifically, we know that brontosauruses have massive hips because their bones are built like they're built to hold all the weight on the back, because for some weird reason they can stand up on their hind legs. I don't know why. They don't walk around like that, but they can move up to eat from trees, and their tail balances them out. But that takes a lot of muscle to hold that weight, just like an elephant. Mm-hmm. Elephants are a whole lot smaller than a brontosaurus is. But if you've ever seen the hindquarters of an elephant, they're not exactly small.
Well, and even looking at a hippo in in my brain, a hippo's strongest area is probably more towards the shoulder
Yes,
than
the
the
shoulders
mouth and
up.
the head.
Because it uses it for swimming.
Yeah.
And then a hippo's head is pretty stupidly big too. And if you have a head that's 3/4 of the length of your body, what are you going with? Yeah, that's a bit big for a head, but hippos are fun. They don't have many teeth though. And
They
apparently they
have
like
enough.
cake. And they dance like ballerinas. But anyway, this entire part here in this passage is God saying, I made this amazing creature that you're not going to stand against. And it didn't take much power to do it. Because I just spoke and there he was. So why are you questioning me? Why would you question my ways? But going into 41, it says, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? So that obviously should make you think, well, obviously it's a big fish.
Something in the water, at least, we're fishing for.
So similar to post-evolutionary Christian scientists thinking the behemoth is a hippo, they think a Leviathan is a crocodile, which really makes no sense when you read this passage. We'll read the passage and you can judge for yourself until we tell you what we think it is anyway. In verse 2 it says, can you put a reed through his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many supplications to you? Will he speak softly to you? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him as a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird, or will you leash him for your maidens? Will your companions make a banquet of him? Will they apportion him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? So all these things are talking about, can you take this creature, whatever it is, as a pet, and basically subjugate it?
No.
And there's not really a lot describing him so far, so yeah, maybe. But you have these different things that should bring you to fishing, like a fishing line, a fishing spear, a harpoon.
The hook.
Yeah, the hook, and then a line, and all these different things that should make you go, well, obviously this is in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, maybe. I mean, people have crocodiles as pets. That's
But apparently
exactly
you cannot
normal.
walk your crocodile in Chicago,
Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can't tie it to a meter, parking meter in Fort Lauderdale. So, I mean, obviously someone had a crocodile's pet in those places, or an alligator. But are they really that impressive an animal?
I mean, they can definitely be imposing to humans, but
Well, the next passage is talking about exactly that question, which is why I brought it up. But in verse 8 it says, lay your hand on him, remember the battle, never do it again. Indeed, any hope of overcoming him is false. Should not one be overwhelmed at the sight of him? No one is so fierce that he would dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has preceded me that I should pay him? Everything under heaven is mine. And so in answer to the question there is, no, this is not a crocodile, because there are people in Florida that wrestle alligators
I mean,
for sport.
if you're old enough to remember Crocodile Hunter, no, what was his name?
Yes, crocodile.
Crocodile Hunter.
Steve Roy.
Steve Irwin.
He would literally
He
wrestle
would
alligators.
just jump on their back. And granted, he was trained and he had experience and he had lots of people helping, but even just one person being willing to take that first step is impressive, because they're huge and strong, and
Well, if it's a really
They
big
kill.
one, you can still kill it. It's not that big of a deal if you have enough people and you
Yeah.
have the right equipment, which in this case would be a spear or easily a gun.
well, I think it gets more into here shortly. It'll make it more clear that it couldn't be what we know of as a crocodile or an alligator, because it talks about the armor and things that
Yes, that's the next
can't
section.
be pierced.
It's just, once again, God is saying, I made this thing. I'm bigger, I'm better, I'm stronger, and you can't match to me. If you can't even match this animal that I made.
Yeah.
Because he says it very clearly, if this has preceded me, why would I want to pay homage to this thing? Well, you didn't. God was first. God was bigger. So in verse 12 it says, I will not conceal his limbs, his mighty power or his graceful proportions. If you've ever seen a crocodile, they are not graceful in proportion. Not a bit. They've got stupidly small arms and legs and a massively long tail. And they can very slowly walk on land. Get them in the water is a different matter, but they're still not graceful in how they look. But in verse 13, who can remove his outer coat? Who can approach him with a double bridle? Who can open the doors of his face with his terrible teeth all around? His rows of scales are his pride, shut up tightly as with a seal. One is so near another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They stick together and cannot be parted. So all those are talking about the armor plating on this creature. And crocodiles and alligators don't actually have scales. They have very tough leather-like skin. And so it's not a crocodile. What is clear 100% is that it is a reptile. A very, very large reptile. Because only reptiles have scales.
I think this section actually does, like, it could seem more like a crocodile or an alligator because of the teeth and the scales and anyway, it's really the next.
Well, yeah, if you looked at old alligators and crocodiles, there are ones that actually had scales on them that have been extinct for a long time and were really big, like 50 plus feet long, big. But then you get into this next section and it's not a crocodile. But in verse 18 is where we're at. It says, his sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lights. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke goes out of his nostrils as from a boiling pot burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. Okay, so... can anyone say dragon? Dragon! It's a dragon.
Okay, if you don't have the song from Pete's Dragon, the original one, in your head.
The good one, not the one where he's a dog.
With,
Mickey Rooney.
Yeah, Mickey Rooney. That's now playing in my head, in case you wanted to know.
Okay. He's not named Elliot Howard. This is Leviathan. And he's scary, not funny looking.
Cartoonish.
But we don't understand how this works. Obviously, this thing breathes fire. Some way, shape, or form. There are creatures that we have in existence today that can shoot acid from their stomach that can burn things. And acid can start fires. Is this what it is? I don't know.
Well, and also, another cartoon, if you've ever seen How to Train Your Dragon, they have one that has two heads that they talk about. Now, granted, this is a cartoon and it's all made up, but they do take inspiration from folklore and stories and things like that for even our cartoons and things. So this dragon in the show, one head breathes this like gas, chemical, whatever, and the other one sparks, like shoots sparks, and that ignites the gas from the other head. And so between the two, it breathes fire essentially.
So yeah, like I was saying, is that folklore and history shows that there are fire-breathing dragons. Obviously, we have lots of mythology and movies showing fire-breathing dragons. But we also have some that shows non-fire-breathing dragons, like most Chinese dragons do not breathe fire. But almost all the European dragons are shown to breathe fire in various amounts. We don't know what they are yet. It could be some dinosaur that we haven't identified. It could be T-Rex breathes fire. We don't know. It could be all dinosaurs breathe fire. We can't exactly see their soft internal organs once they're dead and fossilized. They kind of decayed. Mm-hmm. But we'll go into that a bit more in a minute once we read more of it. So verse 22 reads, strength dwells in his neck, and sorrow dances before him. The folds of his flesh are joined together. They are firm on him and cannot be moved. His heart is as hard as stone, even as hard as the lower millstone. When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. Because of his crashings, they are beside themselves. Though the sword reaches him, it cannot avail, nor does spear, dart, or javelin. He regards iron as straw and bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones become like stubble to him. Darts are regarded as straw. He laughs at the threat of javelins. His undersides are like sharp potsherds. He spreads pointed marks in the mire. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. He leaves a shining wake behind him. One would think the deep had white hair. On earth there is nothing like him which is made without fear. And we'll leave the last verse for a moment. But all these things going through here, like strength is in his neck. The folds of his flesh are joined together. His heart is hard as stone, which that's probably just less physical and more.
He's vicious.
He just does not care what he ends up killing. And then he raises himself up and crashes down. The sword reaches him but can't hurt him. The spear, dart, javelin can't hurt him. He just plows through iron like it's a piece of grass to him. He knocks through bronze like it's stepping on rotted wood, which, if you live in Oregon, you know what rotted wood feels like. Because it's all the wood, basically. And the arrow can't hurt him. Sling stones don't hurt him. Darts don't matter. Javelins don't matter. And he has razor sharp undersides that leaves marks in the mire. And so that would bring the question of what's mire? And mire would be muddy underground areas like near waterways. And obviously not always underground, but you dig down through the grass on top of it and you get to the part that's under the ground, literally. So like mud and stuff. Like if you've ever seen the footprints of dinosaurs that are fossilized, that's in mire. If you've ever walked along a river where there's no rocks on the side, you walked in mire because you step on the grass and you just sink. And it's nasty. Mm-hmm. And this thing, whatever it is, has something sharp on its belly that slices that to ribbons. And so that brings us to what in the world is this thing? We know it lives in the water, at least part of the time. Obviously, it can be up on land. Mm-hmm. Breathes fire, apparently. It's covered in scales. And it crashes somehow. It has sharp underbelly.
And teeth.
Has lots of evil teeth. And it makes the water boil underneath it, but it goes into the deeps of the ocean. That pretty much says plesiosaur. If you don't know what a plesiosaur is, think the Loch Ness Monster. And they have, from what we've found archaeologically, they have a set of scales on their stomach that are very sharp, that are used for aerodynamic and rotational abilities while they're swimming. And they can go on ground because, yeah, they have flippers, but that doesn't stop seals. It's not going to stop a plesiosaur. They've seen Nessie on ground before. Not to mention there are other plesiosaurs that have been spotted around the earth, like in the Great Lakes or here in Montana in Flathead Lake.
Yeah, I believe there are several. Any really large, deep water lake.
Lake Victoria in Africa is known to have several. So, are these things extinct? By no means. Do we have the capacity to kill them now? Probably. We can kill lots of things with guns and explosives. But they didn't exist 4,000 years ago when this was written. And so, this thing is clearly a massive entity. Clearly a dinosaur because of the scales and general reptileness of it. But it would kill people.
Clearly it was...
Did it want to? I don't know. Maybe it just felt like it. Hard to tell.
Yeah.
But regardless of all that, God is bigger and made this thing. And he didn't make it just to eat people. That would be really dumb. He made it for a purpose that we don't understand. It could be he made it just for us to be able to look at it through Job and say, oh my goodness. God made a monster that's still nothing compared to him in his power. Yeah. And that's what brings us to the last verse here, which is, he beholds every high thing, and he is king over all the children of pride. So we know there's nothing else on earth like him, which there's no other anything like a plesiosaur, which leads to it being a plesiosaur, because they got massive necks, massive tails, humongous bodies, and flippers. I don't get the flipper part, but God did it.
Swim.
Yeah, obviously it's gonna help it swim, but it looks like a brontosaurus with flippers. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, they're awesome, and they have lots of teeth, and they also have a nice hole right here in their forehead. That would be a place where you could put your nice little reed in here that's talking about in verse 2. which once again does not work on a crocodile.
Mm-hmm.
But even with all that, he has no fear in verse 33. That is how we're supposed to be in life. Not because there's nothing that can harm us, because there's lots of things that can harm us. We can trip and fall on a pair of scissors and die without any difficulty. We can get an infection in our finger that can kill us. We can get our finger stuck up our nose and die from it. There are lots of things that can kill us. We are very, very fragile. But God is bigger, and God made us because he loves us. And if we are Christians, we have nothing to fear, because it says in the New Testament, why would we fear those who can harm the flesh but can do nothing to the spirit? Why shouldn't we fear him who can destroy both body and spirit?
Mm-hmm.
Which would be God, if we didn't know.
Well, in verse 33 there, that Leviathan is king among the sons of pride, is what it says in the ESV. Let's see. He sees everything that is high. He is the king over all the sons of pride. So God is pointing out that this creature that humans have no chance against, or a chance to control or become, subdue, this creature is the king of all pride. Like, he
has hubris, apparently.
It is aware that it is the top of the food chain, and it does not care who or what is around it. It is the top, and it knows it, yet God still made it, and it's still in subjection to God. So,
and it can't do anything that God doesn't allow him to.
Yeah. I think, again, is just God pointing out, you know this creature, you know of it, you know how it behaves and how
dangerous it is.
Dangerous it is, and how completely
how small you are in comparison.
Small you are in comparison, and yet that creature is still in submission to God, and yet Job is trying to kind of assert himself as, well, why hasn't God done this? Because he should. Like we know better than God.
We'll talk about it more next week, because at this point Job's not dumb enough to go, well, I should be in charge. No, Job at this point has it thoroughly through his head that he's the nothing and God has control of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll say such in chapter 42. But it's something for us to learn from, in that even if we are the head of some massive corporation, or the president of the U.S., or the chairman of China, or whatever else we want to be, it doesn't matter, because God's bigger.
God is bigger. And I think that this is not in Job, but part of what Job initially said was, who are we to question God? He gives and he takes away. It's up to him, because he's the one in charge. And then he kind of lost sight of that. But
he got distracted on the way.
The concept that God is only good when things are going well or things go the way I want is so wrong and so anti-biblical. God is good no matter what happens, and
just we need to be willing to let go of our perspective and look at it from God's perspective.
That doesn't mean that we're not going to see heartache. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have pain, but it means that God is still good and righteous and holy and working all things for our good, even pain, even sorrow, even tragedy.
We're still subject to the effects of sin, whether it's our sin or other people's sin, but
it happens.
Everything is going to help somebody, someplace, somewhere to come to God.
Well, and
even if it's not us.
In the sorrow and the trial and the struggles that we go through, we can either choose, like Job, to wallow in misery and just camp out there in that sorrow and wonder why God must hate us and everyone is wrong and, I'm just a victim. Or we can choose to say, hey, even in this, God is good, and I don't know what he's working or what he's doing, but even in this, he's good and I trust him.
Yeah, so if you don't know, there's a song called It Is Well, and it ties directly into that, because the first verse of the song is talking about when sea billows roll and tempests toss, and everything evokes the image of there's a really bad storm on the sea. And he just got on the news that his entire family drowned in a shipwreck. Mm-hmm. So even then, God's in control. Mm-hmm. So yeah, life may be hard. It's going to be hard. You're never promised to be anything but hard. But that doesn't mean that God's not bigger. It doesn't mean that he's not in control still.
Mm-hmm. And we just have to trust his character. Well, he's not going to force us to trust him.
He will allow us to, and we will reap benefits from doing such. Yeah. Even if it's not necessarily in this life. Because whether you want to admit such or not, there is another life after this one, and you're all going to get there one way or another.
Well, it's the state in which you arrive that is the question. If you have spent your life denying God and doing things by your own strength and your own understanding, and trying to create or trying to achieve righteousness of your own to be on par with God or to be okay with God, then you've missed the point, because we can't. But God gave us a gift in Christ, that not only did Jesus take all of our sin upon himself, so that when God looked at him, God the Father looked at Jesus, he took the punishment that we deserved and gave it to Jesus. But in that sacrifice, the righteousness that Jesus had from living his life perfectly according to the law and attaining a righteousness that we could never do, that righteousness, when we accept Christ and acknowledge that we need God, that righteousness is given to us. Not that we magically are perfect and we do everything right, but that God looks at us and sees the righteousness of Christ. It's imputed, which I think is a legal term. Sorry.
It's not a real legal term.
Anyway.
It was accepted into legal proceedings because of the Bible.
Anyway.
Imputation is a term from the New Testament that was derived by Paul. Just like double-mindedness was by James.
Okay.
We won't talk about any other legal terms right now. Oh, there's lots of them. But I think we'll go ahead and pray that. Close. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for this day, and thank you that you are great and you are mighty and you are bigger than any of these amazingly big creatures that I'd like to see, but I don't want to run into firsthand. And just thank you that you have all these things in your hand. You work good through all these bad things that happen through every day of life, and we know that you are in control. We just ask you to continue to work and show yourself to be the great and mighty Father and God to all those around us, and just help them to come to see you and know you and be drawn to you through all these things. We thank you for everything you've done. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, and let us know your thoughts if Behemoth and Leviathan are hippos or dinosaurs. Let us know what your thoughts are. We're curious to see.
Or draw us a picture of what you think they look like and send them to us.
That could be cool. We will
post them to the video if you do.
I mean, we could. But yeah, you can send us an email at heartministries@gmail.com, or you can check out the website at heartministries.org. And I think that's all for today.
Yep, it's getting dark.
Okay, thanks. Bye.